Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm Sam, and welcome to Money Moves. And I'm just pumped today. I got some stuff I want to share with you. I've been looking into it over the past few days, and it just makes me so angry. We're going to talk about FTX today, not specifically about the company or what was happening there inside. There's a lot of other people who are doing some great reporting. Great reporting. Today, we're going to talk about one of the forms of FTX's money, which is now trending towards zero. And it's just maddening, right? Because from a just basic security standpoint, basic company setup standpoint, you would think that they would have had someone who said, "Oh, hey, we're holding customer assets." And these things are these are actually very visible customer assets, on-chain customer assets that are visible, being held by people on a crypto network and being used in DeFi, being used to, just trade, borrow against, and now it's worth less than 95% of what it was. And this is the Solana wrapped assets, the Solid assets, specifically the Solid Bitcoin, which FTX had issued and is now not worth barely anything. So here's the backstory. Leading up until this whole thing, this FTX collapse, right? FTX had been running a lot of the wrapped assets, or issuing a lot of the wrapped assets that were being used in the Solana ecosystem. And what I mean by this is okay, think about you have some Bitcoin and you want to bring it in and use it in a DeFi protocol. So what do? You go out and there's a couple of different issuers of these tokens that then exist on these networks. So for Ethereum, you have wrapped-BTC. Wrapped-BTC, there's a bunch of different issuers of wrapped-BTC. Or sorry, there's the main wrapped-BTC people who issue it, and then they send it off to all these other sub-issuers. And then you swap your BTC for wrapped-BTC there and pay a little fee. Same thing happened with the Solana stuff, right? You would send your Bitcoin to Solana, you would send your Bitcoin to FTX. FTX would then hold it for you, and then they would issue you a token that would be put out onto the Solana blockchain. You could take it to DeFi and, just do whatever you want with it, right? It would just go off to live somewhere on Solana. Now, FTX had issued 16,000 of these Bitcoin. That is $271 million at today's price of $16,000, roughly, approximately. That's so much money. So much money. And this is just out there on Solana, right? In Solin, being used for liquidity on Radium, everywhere. It's just everywhere. It's the bedrock of DeFi on Solana, where these Solid wrapped assets. So FTX goes bust. It's gone. Just overnight. Overnight. And during this whole period, all of that Bitcoin, or at least what people thought was Bitcoin, or a token that was backed by Bitcoin, it just fell off a cliff. People figured out pretty quickly. So around November 9th, right, is when everything started happening. People just started dumping it. And by the 11th, when the big news came out, it just dropped. It lost 95% of its value within one day. It went from $16,000 all the way down to $1,000. And it's at $1,000 right now. That's more than a 95% decline on assets on Solana. Huge drop. This just wiped out the TVL for Solana DeFi, because it wasn't just the Bitcoin. They also had ETH as well too. I think they had some other assets, but the main one was this Bitcoin. That is so much Bitcoin. It's 16,000 Bitcoin. It's so much. Just hundreds of millions of dollars just gone. And it's not coming back. People are still paying $1,000 for this stuff because they think that through the whole bankruptcy case, they're going to get back, a little bit of money, right? maybe 5 cents on the dollar, right? And that makes sense, right? If you're going to be buying these wrapped assets, holding them for a decade, God knows what, until all this shit gets fixed through the bankruptcy courts, maybe you'll end up with 5 cents on the dollar. It'll be worth $1,000. Who knows? God knows what. But it just blows my mind, right? It just blows my mind that, these tokenized assets, it's essentially a stable coin, right? And we've talked a lot about stable coins already, right? Stable coins are just another form of money. It's a tokenized version of money. So going back to the stuff that we talked about in Money Moves episode 1, there we looked at how the taxonomy of money exists, right? So looking at these stable coins are a tokenized version of money, tokenized debt obligation that essentially a bank an issuer, in this case FTX, takes in Bitcoin and then spits out a token somewhere else on another network. And that token is like an IOU. It allows you to take that token, go back to FTX and say, hey, I want my Bitcoin back, give it back to me. And they should be able to give it back to you at a later date. Unfortunately, the collateral disappeared because Sam is a shithead. Not me, but SBF. And now people have to figure out, now they have to go to this long bankruptcy thing, and nobody knows where or how senior these Bitcoin claims are going to be, or if they were even custodied off in their own little section. Probably not, based on the price, because it's probably going to zero. But now they have to figure it out, how senior is this debt? And that's the, $270 million question. How senior is this debt? How much are we going to get paid out on the dollar for the assets that we hold? How long is it going to take to get the money back? It's going to take years and years. So nobody knows how senior the debt is. Essentially, seniority in debt says that there are people that get paid out first. So when a company like FTX goes bankrupt, debt holders get paid out first, and then equity gets paid out less. But inside the debt holders, there's all these different super senior, junior, all of these different levels, right? I'm not a bankruptcy lawyer. There's people that understand this a lot better than I do. But it's just a total mess because there's no records. There's really shoddy documentation, and the courts are going to have to figure this out over years and years and years. Now, there's two parts really to being a custodian issuing these assets. The first one is going to be how you set up the company. In this case, it should be really simple. Your custodian that you should be setting up should be set up in a way where the solvency of whatever other trading firm or anything should have nothing to do with the assets that are being custodied. They should be fully separated. They shouldn't be touched. They should just be singular. You're essentially you're just holding these assets for somebody until they come and take it back. End of story. There should be no rehypothecation going on. Absolutely no rehypothecation. Rehypothecation is when you take an asset and you're custodying it. So if somebody gives me the Bitcoin, I'm custodying it, I lend it back out. That's rehypothecating. That shouldn't happen at all. At all. And I think we're going to get a lot of these custodial rules coming out of this whole shitty situation. So once you've got a company that is very legally soundly structured, that has no rehypothecation and has incredibly good security practices, because you do not want to hack. The last thing that you want is the $400 million hack that happened to FTX on the day after they declared Chapter 11, where all this money went missing. You don't want that. Got to work with a good custodian. It's got to be Fort Knox level security. It's got to just be end of story. Security should be the number one issue. We're not lending customer funds out. We're going to issue these assets. So once the assets get issued, okay, they're living on a blockchain somewhere. Well, there's two assets that are going to be living on a blockchain somewhere. So the first asset will be the actual token on whatever network it's being issued to. So Bitcoin on Solana, Bitcoin on Ethereum, right? It's really easy to see the contracts that are issuing these tokens to ensure the safety and security of those assets. Everything is public there. You can see that when those ERC20 tokens are issued, they're sent out, and they function the way that they're supposed to, right? It's pretty clear and dry how ERC20 works at this point. I don't think anybody has questions about that. Now on the back end, all that Bitcoin, in this case, has to be stored somewhere. It has to be put into a wallet. It's got to be held in maybe multiple wallets for safety and security. And you're going to have cold wallets, you're going to have hot wallets, but it doesn't really matter because those wallets are just going to be somewhere. So that company that you've set up, it's really soundly legally structured. It's got Fort Knox security. It now needs to be able to publish the public addresses of all that Bitcoin that is backing up those tokens on a daily basis, or even block by block. You could have like a block by block detailed, up-to-date showing, saying that like all the Bitcoin that we've issued on Ethereum and Solana, we've got the same amount in all these wallets over here. And the way that you prove that is that you do an attestation. So, or you sign a transaction. So essentially the person that holds the private keys, the custodian that's holding all these Bitcoin in a wallet somewhere, they can come along and they can just come out and they can sign a transaction. They can just sign something, right? It's like proof of you having the private keys. You can come out, you make this signature using your private keys, and then everybody can see, oh, hey, they control these assets. They still have control of these assets, and you should do that at least monthly, right? If not daily, to show that these assets are in good control. So this whole structure and framework is kind of like the default. If I was setting up, I mean, like, I'm not even a security specialist, but I know how to set up I know how I legally set up a token company like this. It's just simple. Like you think about customer security and the fact that like if they give you your money, you're always going to be able to give it back. Just boggles me. I have no idea how FTX could have screwed this up, but we have the ability to demand change and to ensure that all these custodians that are issuing all these one-to-one wrapped assets into the future have like really clear audits, clear legal structures, and clear attestations that provide 100% transparency into what the business is doing. Like all of the problems that we talk about with these wrapped assets is that the transparency just doesn't exist. The legal structures, the on-chain data, the technical setups, the security backing it, all that's not disclosed. Now we need to have a system where all of that can be completely out in the open. And whether you're issuing a stable coin, whether you're issuing a wrapped BTC token, you should be held to a very, very high standard, and you should never lose customer funds. It's absolutely unacceptable what happened here with this little small subsection of FTX. We're talking like $270 million in a $10 billion claim. It's incredibly small in the big picture. But looking back on it and reading about it, it never should have happened. Never should have happened. The people running that shop probably should have known, the people on the inside that were running this Wrap BTC scam should have known what was happening. They probably had some insight into what was going on. So I'm fully aware that a lot of this is going to come to light over the next few weeks. And it's really going to be a defining moment for security practices in the industry, how we set things up legally, and what we are going to demand as customers, as retail, as institutional clients going into the future. It's just the default. So take this lesson and remember everything that happened here, because this should be the last time that a centralized company issuing tokenized assets is ever able to get away with this. End of story. It should never happen again. It should never happen again. Demand transparency. Demand openness. Demand smart, sound, strong, legal, security, everything. Demand it all. And if they don't provide it, go somewhere else to somebody that does. Because it's your money at the end of the day, and you shouldn't get scammed like this. I'm sorry for the people that lost all this money in their wrap BTC. It sucks, especially if you've been saving for a long time. So that's it. I hope you learned a little bit today. This was another episode of Money Moves. This is why I believe so strongly in building a very sound stablecoin, whether it's for Bitcoin, whether it's for ETH, like we're doing with Frax ETH, or with Frax, or anything else really. It doesn't matter. Openness, transparency has to be number one. Transparency is the top priority, so that you can see that you're not being rehypothecated against, so that you can see that all the collateral is there, and that at the end of the day, you're going to get your money back. Number one priority. Nothing else matters. Thank you. I am Samuel McCullough. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will see you next time for another episode of Money Moves.